Good evening, everyone. This is Fatima, Senior Vice Chairperson, Read Pakistan, co-founder as well. So this is another very amazing session where we have our guest speaker for Read Talk today. We have Joanna Whitlock, and Joanna is the author of Speaking Made Simple. Now, most of you must be knowing about her works, but I'm going to give a slight introduction, which might just be very beneficial for you all to know what this session is going to be about. So Joanna is here with us. She is a self-confessed geek. Now, this is amazing because people who I meet are usually not the ones who say that we're geeks, or they're not the ones who say that, we're book readers, like we're geek book readers. They say, yeah, we're okay. We're very moderate people. But Joanna had the guts to actually say that, yes, I'm a geek. I love it. So this is wonderful when it comes to her love for everything. Now, the most amazing people in the world, now this is what the research says, are the people who have that exuberance, that will to go that extra mile. And that is why they reach to those limits which are really unbreakable, those limits which are unachievable, those limits which are really there for people who are like Joanna herself. She's an amazing person, very smiley face. You can see that right on the screen. And like always, she is, smiling and laughing. By the way, I love the anorak you're wearing, the yellow one. I'm going to give a little so let's move on with a few other very important things about Joanna. Joanna, she is an expert basically, she's an expert in a quite number of things for self-expression, I must say. She's a writer, she's a coach, and a cartoonist, which is a very amazing thing. Very few people, and Joanna, you're the first one actually on our session who has been, who is a cartoonist, because usually people who are here are, belonging to different fields. A cartoonist is a person who has a lot of imagination, and this is exactly what the topic is going to be about. She has a total number of 6 books which are already published, mashallah, and over 15 years of experience in the classroom, which actually makes it a brilliant coupled up combination. So she is an amalgamation of a lot of good things. Today's session is going to be really fantastic. Joanna, how are you? Thank you so very much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you, Fatima. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Can't wait to get started.
Yes, of course. Well, the introduction was about you. It must be lovely, of course. So, Joanna, well, today's topic, because, it's very interesting. The topic is very interesting, but it's all the more interesting that people have been, slightly moved by the topic. Well, I was, just discussing it with a few people, like right before the session, and I was wondering and asking them if the topic was, something that could interest them. And everybody said that speaking made simple. How is this not interesting? And I think this is brilliant. What would you say about the topic? I mean, I would like that people should be knowing more. People who have joined us here live should actually be introduced to the concept, what we're going to talk about today. So how about if you elaborate on the topic first a bit, and then we can move forward.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, it's amazing because very often when I go into the classroom, I've got every minute prepared of the classroom, and because I like other people to speak and then I give them feedback, that takes up a lot of time. And every single time I go into the classroom, I think to myself, shall I cut out this first part? And the first part is asking them why they think speaking is important. And every time I worry, it's taking up too much time in the lesson, but every time I keep it in. And it's amazing how everybody in the room already believes speaking is important, and yet nobody has had lessons on speaking. And to me, that's incredible, this, and especially, I mean, I work very often with people who've got multiple degrees. They're already on their master's degree or doing a PhD, and they happen to have English as a second language, but they've never been given feedback about their speaking, especially if it's speaking in a group or under a situation where there involves more pressure. So, as I say, the classroom tends to be that type of thing. The books that I've written are about everyday speaking. So instead of thinking of speaking as a skill that you either have or don't have, what I've done is break it down into 32 different building blocks, where language is one block. So yes, if you've got the language, that is really important. Grammar is another block, and pronunciation is another block. But also you have blocks like thinking on your feet, or courage, and just generally thinking skills and how to think quickly.
No, that's wonderful. This is very, very important. So you've said that you've made 32 blocks, which is,
yes, that's right. Yes.
There are going to be a lot of things other than just, that might just be having body language, that might just be having your pronunciation, your language skill and communication skill, everything. That's very amazing. So how do you do it? How do you move forward in a classroom situation where you have a lot of people, and you know that all of them have different minds, all of them have different skills, different observations, and so how do you cope with that, multifaceted situation where you have a number of people who have different skill set?
I think what I like to do is, I'll show you, I'm looking at the books. One is a workbook, and this has the one with the 32 lessons. This is more something that I would say people do on their own or with a different type of teacher. By the time I reach the classroom, what they want is my expertise mainly on the feedback side of things. Every single person in that room wants individual feedback. So that's what I focus on by the time I've got to the classroom. And that's something that I love to do, that they speak for a minute, I give them feedback. They get another chance to speak and just correct the errors straight away. Most of the focus is on good and bad habits.
Oh, great. Good and bad habits. So basically you move from the ethical side into the moral side, and to and fro. And then there is where you're actually playing with language as well, and with their personalities as well. That's a wonderful thing to do. So reading, so how do you make it simple for them to be consumed? Very easy, because you are a teacher, you're a writer, you have analytical capability. I mean, so you can work on a lot of things at one time in your mind, but the IQ or the intellectual, the intellectual level of the people, that must be really difficult to handle. Is that correct? Or do you think that people, how do you make it simple?
I think it isn't so much about IQ, because certainly the people that I meet are very bright people, as the same. The majority have English as a second language. I do work with some native speakers, and they tend to be just people who are feeling that they would like a boost to their confidence and to build their skill level. But say the majority have English as a second language. They're very capable people. They're just finding that there's a gap between all that knowledge that they have and their English and their ability to express that when there's a little bit of pressure in the room in their second language. So as I say, it isn't about IQ. What was your other point though? Sorry, let me just remind you, you mentioned IQ. I wanted to jump on that point.
No, why I was asking you this is because usually what happens is that the people that you're, there in the classroom, they have different intellectual powers or capabilities. So my basic,
there's strengths and weaknesses.
So those weaknesses, I mean, of course, you don't have them. You're there. You have been dealing with situations like those where you make them understand. How do you make it simple? Basically, our concern is, how do you make it simple for them to, to go through a situation where all their problems are different, while at the same time, you're one person. They need to, connect to you. So how do you make it simple for them? It doesn't become really difficult. Do you have any, say, difficulty dealing with the situation? Is there any story, big one?
Well, I think what I'll do though is separate it into two. So you have people working with the books at home, and I've said to you that I have the 32 different modules and ideas. And what I think of them as is, so there's a framework, and there's 4 legs on this framework, and each of them has eight sections, which makes the total of 32. But what happens is, once you're aware of them, in your normal everyday, you will see opportunities to practice and explore each of them. And then it is for you to let your own intuition guide you, as in, oh, I'll do more on this, or I'll do more on this. It can be useful for me to come into the room and say, okay, let's evaluate where you are now on each of those positions. And you will see yourself where your strengths are, and you will see yourself the things that you're probably avoiding and that you might benefit from boosting a little bit. For example, so the 4 different pillars are language, thinking, professional, and creative. So very often you find that people tend towards either the professional skills or the creative. So the professional, they're very confident on learning a way to do something, but they're less confident about the creative side, which is their own self-expression. And so it's my job to encourage the other, because a lot of people don't have a goal for their speaking skills. And what I say to them is, use my goal for the time being, and then you'll develop your own. But my goal for you is flexibility. I want you to be able to speak about anything, to anyone, anywhere, about, anytime. That is my goal for you. So I'm going to give you all of these 32 different blocks. But at some point, you're going to say, some of these aren't relevant to me, or not important to me, or I just don't care about them. So it's my job to lay it out simply in front of you. And as I say, and with that self-knowledge and those prompts, you will say yay or nay, this is a strength or this is a weakness. In a classroom, some of the most important things are to point out people's strengths. So, for example, if I was speaking to somebody and I would say, you've got great eye contact, and, the way that you speak is so sincere, I really feel that you care about me. And people may not have been told that kind of feedback, or they may not have been told how much their humor comes through, or how professional they seem in a certain situation. And then it's my job to say, oh, next time, why don't you, there's 3 different things I can do for recommendations. 1 is to eliminate the bad habits. 2 is, 2 is to stop some of the, let me just think, there's bad habits, stop, do more of, or a completely new idea. So stop a bad habit, for example, if they're doing ums and ahs. Do more of, very often is eye contact or smiling or something like that. So those are quite simple fixes. And then the 3rd one is a completely new idea. So I may say to them, do you know what, when you're speaking sometimes, I'd like to hear more of your opinions. Because very often people, when they're trying to do something right, don't stretch themselves to the opinions or something like that. But say that's a completely different situation. In the classroom, I can jump around my subjects with each individual person for their individualized feedback. But in the book, it's my job to lay out all the subjects. And when you see them, that is what is simple. That is when you say, oh, of course, if I did that, that would improve my speaking. It seems obvious now. That's what I want in terms of the simplicity.
Oh, that's wonderful, because yes, I think that is brilliant, because once a person obviously knows where he's or she is, sort of lacking, or where he needs or she needs help, so that somebody can really pull him off that, ladder where you need improvement. And yeah, I think that's completely understandable that, so which is the problem area that comes more often in your palette? I mean, because you have all those professional people, so there's a very nice amalgamation, very nice combination of people you have. So tell me, which is the problem which usually often comes in front of you, that oh yeah, this is very common, the confidence is very commonly lacking, or you think that no, the concentration is lacking, or so what do you think? What have you actually experienced? Because all these problems, we keep on saying, yeah, this is there. But the problem is that none of us is actually from the relevant field from where you are. So you think that which is that area which comes really often to you, and you think that people usually have, say, about I just want you to give a, anonymous percentage, say for instance, 20%, 30%. So that area would be more focused, as in, this was the problem due to which most of the, pupils or most of the people or most of the students are coming to you. And once that is rectified, usually the problem is rectified of communicating.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is the one which is when the mind freezes. I have a lot of people that feel that there's something wrong with them when their mind freezes and it goes empty, and when there's a certain amount of stress or pressure in the situation. But it could be that they're speaking just to one person who they feel is important, or it could be that there's a few more people. But what happens in that moment, their mind goes empty. And they think, it's because I don't know enough English. It's because my grammar isn't very good. It's because all of these other things. And it's my job to say, no, this is called a fear response. This is perfectly normal. And here's how we're going to work through it.
Wow. Wow. So I see, this is very interesting, because mind freeze is something that can come to anybody at any time, even if you're very, very eloquent with your language.
Yeah.
Still that thing can come, just right in front of you at any time. How do you help people out from that? How do you help them out of their fear? I mean, if you have a situation, say for instance, if I'm here and I go through a mind freeze, I go like, oh my God, what am I supposed to say? What would be the first thing that can actually pull me out of that?
Yeah. Well, ideally, I want to use some preparation with the person before they're in that situation again. But as I say, really from my heart, it's that I don't want people to feel that they are the problem. Because if you have that kind of mindset and you're saying, I'm the problem, I just froze, I don't know enough, I'm no good, then that just perpetuates the problem and makes it even worse. There's lots of things you can do, but the first one is to realize that this is a fear response. You can look this up on Google under fear responses. There's fight, flight, freeze and fawn. In speaking, the fight or flight can make you sound, what's happening is, if you imagine traffic lights. So you're in green, it's comfortable and you're speaking and all the neurons and everything are working really great in your mind. And then you start to feel a little bit of stress. Imagine a speaking situation. You start to feel a little bit of stress, and that's where you start to move to what I call the amber light, but some people call yellow. In the UK, we say amber. And that's one of the first things you do is something called fawning, which is agreeing with the other person, even if you don't agree with them. And that's one of your first signals that you can feel some stress coming up. And then after that, you have the fight or flight, where you may feel defensive and that you have to, or you may feel slightly aggressive. Sometimes it's just what comes out of your mouth. You don't even realize that it's happening. And then the freeze is where the stress level has jumped up that far. And you may work through the stages, but you may also just jump to the freeze point. And really, you need to be bringing yourself down. And there's three ways to do it. One is mindset. Some people that's watching right now may be fabulous at mindset of just relaxing themselves, saying positive things to themselves. Number two is what I prefer in terms of breaking down speaking skills into something that I feel is more concrete and tangible to hold on to. So, for example, I've had feedback on my speaking, and I know I've broken some bad habits, and I know I've gained some good habits. So at the very least, I have that to hold on to. And then number three is to focus on service. Very, very often it's easier if you consider the other person, and if you put yourself in their position. And so you'll stop thinking about yourself so much, and then you're thinking, how can I help this other person? And those can relax you and bring you down. So there's three different ways to do it. But the first thing is to know it's completely normal, and you do recover from it and relax. And you will relax much faster if you tell yourself, this is normal, I'm going to relax myself down.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, that's very difficult actually to tell yourself at a very,
Yeah, the mindset. I find the
Yeah.
mindset part hard. But there's games. I mean, in the UK, we call it thinking on your feet. And we've got loads of speaking shows, which are games. I prefer the games to practice because in the games that they play, if you can think of an answer for some of these challenges, you're not expected to. So it's funny and there's a pleasant experience with it. Can I mention in a game? There's a game in the UK called Articulate. I don't know if you've heard of this game. And you're given a word, and you have to explain it to your friends so that they guess the word. But you're not allowed to say particular words that would be the most obvious words to describe it. And what happens when you give somebody this challenge is, especially if you ask them to do it quickly, their mind freezes. And I want them to experience that. I want them to have that feeling and have the knowledge then that they can recover from this. So just to explain the game, it would be, I was asking you to explain the word chicken so that somebody else could guess that word. But you're not allowed to say chicken, and you're not allowed to say bird, and you're not allowed to say feathers, and you're not allowed to say eggs. Chicken, bird, feathers, eggs. How would you describe it? Put you on the spot. How would you describe the word chicken?
I would rather do that. I can do it like,
are you feeling that moment of panic? That's the question.
the first thing that came to my mind, Joanna, was that I should just simply make the sound of "puck, puck," and then obviously embarrassing people and not interesting for me probably, because then I'm like, okay, at least I'm through.
Yeah. Well, that was really clever. I mean, in a way, that's clever because your mind didn't freeze. It went to, I could make the noise of it, and at least that means that your brain is still fairly relaxed and coming up with suggestions and ideas.
Yeah, and because you are a person like that who I can speak with very easily, and I feel very comfortable. So I think the credit would go to you. So, the chicken can feel happy about it as well.
Yeah. But I say I've done this with people, and the first time that they do it is a moment of panic, and then they can maybe think of 2 or 3 ideas, and then you can see the rest of the people in the room in the chat making suggestions of how to describe a chicken. It's like, yes, it's easy for you in the chat when there's no pressure on you. But if you're the person on camera, then yes, it feels very different.
Yes, of course it's different, and it's very difficult because then if you're given a very difficult word, I would actually agree with you, and in agreeing with you, I would rather say that if you're given a very difficult word which you don't really understand, say for instance, if I say, of course you'll understand this, but for people who are not using it very regularly, if I say it is an antithetically juxtaposed situation where I'm encountering so and so they'd be like, okay, and then that stunned face for one moment, maybe it is something that you can sort of come out with by saying that, oh, I don't have the vocabulary of that kind of a thing. But this is all the more complex if you put this on some simpler words like chicken, so you're like, okay, and you're not supposed to say feathers or anything
as I say,
else.
I mean, the response that you gave me and the making you smile, that's what I like about the teaching and the work that I do, because it's not about making anybody feel bad. It's about making you realize these are perfectly normal. There are tricks and ways to do it. I mean, if you went into public relations training, which is something, one of the modules does talk about the media and interviews and different things like that. There are tricks to it. People don't just start being on the television and then are brilliant from the first moments. They learn how to get their message across. And I wish people would realize that all these people that they see in interviews and on the news have had professional training. It's not that they just woke up one day and we're able to do it. It takes time to get used to it, doesn't it?
It does take time, Joanna, but I think, it is different country to country, because I'm pretty sure that when it comes to United Kingdom, things are very different, because over there things are more systemized. Say for countries who are third world countries like I wouldn't take names, but even for Pakistan, I would just say things are a little different. Why? Because usually they come from, they come from a background which is the education is related with international relations or somewhere, and then they have the speaking skill set. So they just come on the TV and then they learn from their mistakes and so on. I think, and I would definitely agree with you that if you're going to enter somewhere, unless you haven't gotten any prior experience, I think it's very important that you should, if you're a natural, that's a different thing. But I think other than that, I think it's just really, really mandatory that we should go through some training, because it's essential for everything, I think. And it's just not just anchoring or not just speaking. I think it's important for everything that we should know really how to do it, because definitely there are people better than us, and there are people, who would like to learn from the people who are there on the show, on the interview set, or they're just present there. So so when people are looking at you, they might just like to learn from you, or then there are other better people and they would just like to judge you on the on the criteria that you're there, and you just don't know how to speak. So it's very important, but it's sort of different for the the countries who are still developing, or the underdeveloped countries. I think it's a bit different, but it's very important. Yes, but now it's slightly changing, because there is becoming a lot of what I've realized is that people are getting trained, they're getting sort of polished, and then they're allowed to come on TV. So there are sort of rehearsals that you can go through, and then there are studios where you can practice, and so that's backed up with a lot of other stuff now. But initially I think that was not the case. It was just if you could speak well, or if you could just communicate to other people in a very well knitted way, I think that was good enough for people to be
I like to sorry to interrupt you slightly. I do like to separate confidence from the skills side of things, though, because I do know people that are confident and can speak, but developing skills is something else. And I personally believe, because I love my subject, and like I said, I'm a geek about it, I personally believe there's always more to learn, because as I say, I love the subject. And so I'm particularly, for example, I'm learning about storytelling right now, and I'm fascinated by storytelling and the role women as heroes have, as opposed to men as heroes, and how we talk about it. So I'm always learning and always thinking about something about self-expression, and how can I reach that other person and to make a better connection, and my word choice and different things like that.
That's wonderful. What do you think is going to be the most effective, and how can you make it most effective and elaborative? If, for instance, I'm just saying, it's just a random question that just popped up in my head, and I think I should be asking you this because you're very mashallah eloquent in a lot of things. Tell me, how do you think that your speech can be most effective with people? Do you think there are the words are important, or your style is important, or the body language? What do you think? How would you explain it? The most effective way of speaking to people, and then leaving an impact as well at the same time.
Okay. Well, when I mentioned earlier about the good and bad habits, the way I define good and bad habits are: bad habits detract from your message, and good habits add to your message. And generally that's how I think about the effectiveness. So for example, if you have some habits that show that you're nervous, the ums and the ahs and the filler words and the touching your hair and different things like that, all of those little habits that you might have are fine if they only pop in slightly. But if they come in so much and so loud that they detract from what you're saying, and people are no longer able to focus and remain concentrated, remain focused on what you're saying, then that would be bad, and that's when it starts to become ineffective. But all the good habits like eye contact, clarity, pauses, So, and then it can become a little bit more focused on the particular words that you use, avoiding the word not and but, and specific things like that. What you're doing is building the clarity of the message, and then you can go even more advanced with that. There's a thing called Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Are you aware of? So then that studies the emotional reaction that people have in terms of the language you use, and particularly the storytelling and loops and how you connect the information, so that you can always work for the message that you're creating to be stickier for the other person. But the thing that makes the biggest difference is eliminating the bad habits first of all. That is the thing that completely changes your speaking and your message.
Wow, that's wonderful. So each one of us need to. I'm sorry.
I said, in my opinion, I got very passionate about it, and then I thought, slow down, Joe.
No, that's a wonderful. I think that's a very nice elaborative way of telling. So it's very important. We should all learn from it, actually, Joanna, because yes, in your opinion, and I think it's you have quite a weightage because you're dealing with a lot of people. You're dealing with a lot of professionals. You're dealing with a lot of people who are in the field and even outside the field. So there are people who need to go and connect back to the world, and your message definitely becomes very important. So basically what I understand is that so from all of this, I'm just going to pull out the gist, because it's important that each one of us is going to focus on individual pros and cons, so that we can actually connect with the actual us, and in that way we can really be we can really improve on our way of speaking, and also on communicating with other people in a very beneficial way, or say about in a very eloquent or very effective way. So okay. So Joanna, that's really important. Thanks a lot for that. Okay, so we have a lot of people, and that wouldn't be very nice, so I wouldn't take names, but there are a lot of people who actually think over here. So I want, in this as well, I want your personalized opinion. Because when you're talking or speaking with people, it's always nice if I tell them, oh, you know what, Joanna just told me that, and they would be like, really? She's a professional. I think Fatma's got weightage in her, whatever she's saying. So I'm going to ask you something which might just be relevant to us more. Over here in Pakistan, one problem that I wouldn't call it a problem, but it's more or less like something that floats around in the community at large. And what is the basic issue is that what I've come across very frequently is that people think, Joanna, that if you don't know English language, then you are not a very effective communicator, number one. And then you have the vice versa. Like, for instance, if I can speak English in a very eloquent or professional or effective way, I'm talking about the language, which might just be a tool to actually get to the other person. And if I'm speaking well, and if I'm speaking fine, people usually, think that, oh, because he's speaking English correctly, or she is speaking English correctly, then the message being conveyed is correct as well. So, and on the contrary as well. So it's true that if somebody is speaking something, say in regional language, what happens, this is a dilemma. So I'm sharing the dilemma with you so that we can, connect with each other on a different pace as well. So see, and on the vice versa, when somebody is communicating something rightful, even in a regional language, they would say, okay, that's correct, but okay, it will hold less weightage in their minds.
Okay, less
weight.
Weight.
So what do you think, how, number one, is that, what do you think, what is this phenomena that we're facing? And number two, can we rectify it?
That's fascinating. I've never been asked that before. I do see that very often people say to me about native speakers that it's hard to speak to another native speaker because they feel that they may be judged negatively about their English. Yet time and time again, I find that it's two people who have English as a second language that are much harder on each other about their English. And interestingly, when I asked somebody about what their goal was with their English, they were saying that it was, I gave them the word perfect. Are you trying to be perfect? Are you trying to be fluent? And they said to me that they want to sound like they have a good education and that they come from a good family. And that to me is fascinating, that you have an association with English and speaking English well as good education and good family. And I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
Yes.
There seems to be extra meaning involved, where in England, if you speak a language, it's because you're good at languages. It isn't because you've had a good education. I could have had a fantastic education in the sciences and not speak a second language. That somehow within the different cultures, there is this good education and good family. And there's a certain inference there about your morals and different things like that as well. I'm not sure how that's crept in. I think this has been a little while.
I think it has come from the history as well. And I read a couple of books, which were rated with Tariq Rahman. Actually, he wrote those books about 6 to 7. So Tariq Rahman is a Pakistani writer, and he's probably, about him. He's internationally renowned as well. And I found out after reading a couple of books that, English has been made. Obviously, we have history to attach with it. But we also, I think, is one of the problems, or one of the facets of it, is that Tariq Rahman just suggested that, when you're dealing with a language is giving an impression, an English language being the, sort of tabula rasa, or you can say so basically our minds are clean slates, and on it we have we have embedded, or we have engraved English as being the superior language, and so and so. Yeah, it has political personification as well attached with it. But how do you think that also, however, I mean, this is correct that we have historical background with it and the political, agenda, or you can say, or maybe just a political tinge to it. But Joanna, you being a professional, what do you think? How can we counter it? Because it's important, I think. And see, what I've shared with you just now is that people, what are they looking for right now is that they believe in impact. Even if somebody is saying something which is really important, or something which is very true to its nature, still they would say, okay, because it's being said in a regional language. So, you understand.
The several parts to your question. The one part is you can't control the other person and how they receive the message. You can only influence it, but unfortunately you can't make them hear how good your message is, but you do have some influence. And it's true in your situation, you're talking between English and then what may be their first language or a regional language. But what you're really talking to is the bias and the judgment that was there before those two people really said much at all. So as soon as one speaks in English and it's good, and as soon as one speaks in their first language, and they haven't even spoken really, and a judgment has already been made. In fact, that kind of situation happens in a lot of different areas, that we are judging other people. And what happens, I tell you what, for example, being a female speaker to being a male speaker, there will be people in the room that give weight to the male as a speaker more than the female speaker. And that's something that you need to be aware of. And as a female, do I wear high heels and a suit when I step on the stage, even though I struggle to walk in high heels? Or do I wear something that's more relaxed? And again, there are people in the room that will only accept the message as being a valued message from people who look a certain way. What I have done is I have found there's two different scenarios. One scenario is if I'm doing a particular presentation and I'm being introduced, I found that the value of that introduction is incredibly important to set me up as an expert before I've opened my mouth. Because then when people look at me and they may dismiss me or make assumptions about my professional ability, I have that introduction to increase my standing. But I'm also aware that the first thing I need to say needs to be of value and professional and make quite a strong hit, because the way I present myself is quite friendly and approachable. And it's just knowing yourself. One of the modules in the book is about knowing yourself. If you come across as friendly and approachable, and then you start speaking in a friendly and approachable way, in a way, your professionalism diminishes. You need to be being really concise and to the point to counteract that first impression that people are having of you. But if you're very professional and almost stern looking in the way that you make a first impression, then it may be that you need to smile a little bit more and you need to relax the way you're speaking, at least at the beginning, because then people might reach out to you. The way it relates to your subject, though, is that other people already have a bias. You have some influence in that. So, for example, if I was the person and I was speaking in my first language, I may avoid some of the pleasantries and the chit-chat at the beginning and be much more focused about, here is my argument, here is my research, this is what it means. And that knowing that the person with the English has an advantage about the bias of the room, and that they may fill it with a lot of fillers of, to be truthful, or, well, actually, I can't do that. In my first language, I've got to be really insightful about the way I use the language.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, and I think it's all the more important when it comes to interaction on a professional platform, I would rather say. So you can be all nice and easygoing with people who are around you, or maybe, you know, in an informal intercourse, you just might be very, very, you know, in the exchange of words can be very, very informal. But for a formal one, I think, yes, it is brilliant to keep it very concise, very compact, and to the point. And yes, later you can move on to all those, you know, chit chats which you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's very, very correct. I think that would carry a weightage. Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's particularly important, this idea of being insightful, because sometimes the way people explain something, it's like it illuminates the room, isn't it? They have, even in their first language or whatever language, they make that connection. And if they are somebody that can make that connection and it is illuminating, the experience for the person listening is such that you can't help but give weight to it, because your world is transformed. Once you've heard that explanation, there is no going back. The light has been turned on.
Yeah, that is so true, because you keep on experiencing these kind of people. I keep on, you know, Joanna, this is very important what you've just said, because I have actually genuinely experienced it, and with especially, I would say, these talk sessions when I was, you know, speaking with a lot of people from different countries, it always became very important how people got through. I mean, you know, there were obviously there's always this you know, wall, and there has to be an ice breaking moment where, you know, so I communicate with this person in a, you know, more brilliant way, or in a different way, you know, very nicely, or maybe we get along very well. So there's still people who are connected with me even after these talk sessions. And I think I'm definitely going to give 100, you know, percentage to your argument, or you're saying that, you know, people connect even in a different language because there is a different kind of connection, and that connection is a combination of a lot of things, not just the language, but other things as well. So yeah, this is brilliant. What do you think? So I'm sure that what are you doing?
Sorry, my door opened to the studio, but nobody's there. That's all right.
Oh my God, is that spooky?
No. My husband was there. It was a person. No, but I think he realized what was happening, so he left. Yeah, carry on.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to tell you that, you shouldn't be worried. I still have 15 more minutes to go with you. You know that. Okay.
Yes, no, that's good. That's good.
That's great. So, Joanna, one question that, again, I'm just going to be very, I think I'm going to be more precise about it. What do you think? There has to be a message to people who are, either they're students, even they're from professional, fields. I want you as a professional to give them a message to make their speech more eloquent, more simple. Just one message, or maybe just two.
Can I change the question slightly? The question slightly? Is that okay?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Can I change it slightly? What I find a lot of people that come to me say is that I will be better as a speaker when I have more vocabulary. So they very much associated that with the vocabulary. So they found their own solution. They believe that the solution is vocabulary. Now, I personally believe there are other ways to become a better speaker. And, we've just mentioned about adding value and being insightful or being a clearer speaker. But if somebody is convinced that they need more vocabulary before that they can be confident speaking, let's address that and say, how much vocabulary do you have? And then they go, I don't know. So it's like, okay. And the website I'm going to say to people is one called testyourvocab.com. I think it's about 3 million people have tested their vocab. There's a 15-minute test. You tick the words that you know, and the computer will generate a report saying roughly how many words you know. And it will also tell you what that equates to. So, for example, if it says 3,000 words, that roughly equates to being able to join into most conversations. If you know 10,000 words plus, that roughly equates to 10,000 words tends to be the limit where you will need to be working in English if you want to build your vocabulary above that, or living in an English-speaking country if you want to be above that. So, it's that I've changed the question slightly.
Yes.
I believe there's lots of ways, as there are individuals to improve their speaking, but I get a lot of pushback from people saying it's just vocabulary. I need vocabulary. I don't speak because I'm not confident without the vocabulary. And so I would say, get your numbers then. Find out where you are right now and what it says about that. And the majority of people I've spoken to are at this, because they can understand me, they're already at 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 words. So that's really high. That's, if you're at 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, you can be an English teacher. So I'm trying to make them feel better about their vocabulary and encourage them to go in other directions to be clearer and better speakers.
I think that's brilliant, because one of my, I'm just going to talk about, like, say about 6-7 years back, when I had a few students and I was, giving lectures after my master's in English literature, and I was supposed to do MPhil in English linguistics. So I said, okay, so in the meanwhile, I'll give some lectures to, the junior ones. And I said, okay. So I started giving lectures. The interesting part was, and I'm going to share this with you because you've just exactly, you've just poked that memory that I had of students coming to me and telling me, oh, Fatima, we know that, we can improve, but how about if you tell us ways where we can improve our vocabulary? And I used to tell them, no, just try reading books which are simpler first and get the message through, make things easier for you. So there are books which have 300 words vocabulary, 400 words, and so on. So, you know, I told them that even if you want to read Shakespeare, obviously you can't pick up the original, you know, and just start reading. So go for the easier version, which is actually made for the kids, and then you can move forward, and so on. So these are simpler ways. But yes, you have just poked this memory that people were coming to me and telling me that, yeah, you know, we need to work on our vocabulary. How do we do that? And amazingly, I told them, you know, so this was a class which was, I would rather say 2 days a week. So because it was a subject and it was compulsory, so they had to take it. And I picked up, I remember, excuse me, one word, and I would stick it on the whiteboard. I would stick it, and I would say, so all of you know this, just a few students knew about it, and the rest I said, okay, then memorize it. You want to improve on your vocab? Okay, please memorize it. I'll ask you next week. And this couldn't even go for 4 weeks, because basically, and then I told them that, see, vocab is not that important. It's you don't know how to place it. You don't, if you just memorize, it's just of no value. You need to place it somewhere, then you need to use it, and you need to implement it and make it a part of your, you know, it has to be a part of your brain, a part of your thinking process. And so they said, okay, so that's about it about vocab. But yes, this is a genuine concern people do think. And I think when this is already live, but I usually post this on my Facebook, you know, page. And what happens, a lot of people get to see this later on as well, Joanna. So I think this is an important thing. Whoever is going to listen to this, please do, people and students especially who are going to listen to this, please do understand that vocab is not the only thing that you need to improve, polish. And I think, yes, this is really important, because, you know, at the end of the day, probably we're not even using all those complicated words. I think, Joanna, has forgotten half of my vocabulary that I was trying to memorize when I was doing my master's back, you know, from 7-8 years back. You know, I did my master's ages back now, I feel.
Can I add something to the conversation, though? Because it's something, I mean, when I say I geek out about my subject, I geek out about psychology and how people work as well. And one of the things that I've noticed is really important is that people feel that they're making progress. And this is called the progress principle. It's been around for a while now. And I say it's not something I've created. It's very important that people feel that there's a meaning to what they do and that they're making progress. And originally, when they first started learning English, they got that from vocabulary. The learning curve was such that in the first few lessons of English, suddenly they knew so many more words and could do so many new things that it gave them that rush of feeling good. But later on, when you can converse, when you can survive in English, and what you want to do is get even better, the learning curve has changed, and that you can learn new words, but it doesn't give you the rush and that feeling anymore. And you may well not use those words. And it's complicated even more by in speaking, what we have is something called variable feedback, which means one day we can have a conversation and think, wow, my English is great, I'm doing so great. And then the very next conversation we have, nothing, like you don't understand the other person, you've forgotten all your English, you now feel terrible. And that's called variable feedback. And that's terrible for how it impacts on you as a person and how you feel, and this sense of making progress and that all these hours are worth something. So typically we judge our progress by the results that we have. And what I like to suggest to people is that you need to judge your progress through the process. So, for example, tick off every day. Every day you watch something in English, that's progress, rather than waiting for the result with the speaking.
Okay, so should I be doing that now? That it's like...
Well, no, I think it depends on if you're feeling demotivated about learning, which I don't think you are. I think from what you're saying to me is you are in an environment where you are meeting new people. So you're hearing probably new accents and different pronunciation and different ideas. And so you're stretching yourself. And that's what probably other people, as if they can put themselves in that environment, then that will give them the sense of progress that they're looking for. But if they're at home and they don't have that kind of input in their life, then yes, maybe just watching something on YouTube or a video is enough to say, hey, I watched an hour and a half of videos in English. I will be better. Because you have to be better from an hour and a half of practice. I may not show it in the next conversation, but it's all going to build up to something.
Yeah, because that I think it always leaves an imprint on your mind. And even if you're not very, very conscious of, you learning new things, or moving into that realm where you're getting a lot of, so even there, if you haven't reached to that point, I think something is retained in your mind. And in that way, yes, definitely at the right time, at the right moment, it will come out, in front of, usually in front of people. So yeah, that is going to, really make a difference. What do you think? How do you inculcate confidence? I mean, for speaking, how do you do that with your people?
That's a very good question. Lots of people said to me, be confident, sound confident. And you're like, what's that look like? What's that mean? I think confidence on a simplest level is about your posture and about the eye contact and the clarity of your speaking. So once again, that comes down to the good and bad habits, that as soon as you eliminate some of those bad habits that make you look less confident, then you automatically appear more confident. But then there's subtle things too. There's how much do you deviate from the norm? For example, you're in a meeting, you're expected to just agree with the boss. Do you disagree with the boss? How do you express yourself? That in itself may be interpreted as confidence as well.
Like the way I would just say, your point is very good. However, I think, or something like that. However, can be a very nice tool, I think, otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're speaking with, yes, I think that actually does, build in a lot of confidence, or give you the boost. If you know exactly what you want at what hour or what time do you really require that notion, or really require that thing. Other than that, what do you think? I have experienced, I would rather, add a few things, Joanna. What do you think? So confidence, I think there are times when you're really confident and you can deal with the whole situation in a very eloquent way, very different way, very effective way. But then there are situations that generally people who are very confident, they tend to seem a little discomforted by the situation. I'm not going to say that I never, come into positions where the confidence is a bit less, but I have actually generally seen it, that people who tend to be very effective, very, they make their way through, but then all of a sudden you would feel that there is something which is lacking at times. How do you counter that? Or do you think that's just okay? Or how do you counter it otherwise?
My own particular experience is that this is normal, and this is about you stretching and growing yourself. So that's why I see speaking as building skills rather than being something that is a switch on, off, good, bad, confident, not confident. So, for example, I am building my confidence with who I'm speaking to. But if I met the Queen tomorrow, I might stutter a little bit. So, because I would be in a very new position. And for me, the way I experience speaking is that I found speaking very hard when I was younger. And the who, why, where, how, all those questions, who I'm speaking to matters and changes the way I feel confident. Why I'm speaking, how much I care about the subject, what I'm talking about changes my level of confidence. Where I am, what's just happened in the day. For me, those are all the nuances. So if anything, I'm completely the opposite way in terms of confidence, that I feel it's very changeable about the situations you're in.
Brilliant. I think that's just splendid.
That's my own experience. Yeah.
Yes, And I think it's your experience. It's I think my experience as well. That yes, when you're in a situation where you can actually not if you're in a commotion, say for instance, then probably even if you're confident, even if you're not dealing rightly with the situation or dealing with it rightly, I think it's all going to come out in a very different way than your actual personality is just lacking in those specific decisions. So Joanna, I think your husband must be just waiting, and I've already taken 1 hour of yours that was promised from your end. I am so grateful to you that you have come for the social cause. You've extracted time. You're mashallah professional, and you're always there's always a lot that you have to do. You're there, you're reading a lot, and for Read Pakistan, it really does matter. It really does matter. I mean, I'm not just saying it, it's there.
Yes.
People who pull out time from their situations, from their lives, and for a social cause, it's really brilliant. It's really amazing how you're able to do that. Why? Because I personally feel that way, Joanna, that it's always difficult. I mean, you always have something to do. You always have a routine. You always have a timetable to follow. And you just so easily said that, yeah, I'll come for a social cause. And I think that's brilliant.
It's been my pleasure.
Oh, no,
and I feel like I've learned something too. I really like that you were telling me about situations that you've experienced or that you've seen other people experience. So thank you for that. I really like that.
No, thank you very much, Joanna. For people who have just joined us, let me give a quick, brief introduction. It was already given in the beginning. People who joined us in the midst of it, I'm just going to tell all of you that our guest speaker for today's Read Talk was Joanna Wedslock. She is the author of Speaking Made Simple, which is a brilliant book. I think you should all go through that. She's a self-confessed geek. Like I said in the beginning, and but it's Joanna, it was a brilliant talk that we had. You're a writer, you're a coach, and a cartoonist. And let me just add this up, because cartoonist, we didn't focus on that because our topic was a little different. I really wanted you to focus on that side of it, that aspect of your life as well.
Maybe another day.
Yes.
Maybe another day. It's all self-expression, isn't it? It's all self-expression.
It is, but it's brilliant. You found a field which was really out of the box, because when it comes to creating cartoons, you need explicit imagination, which is really active. It's really elaborative. You go forward and everything. So I think this is brilliant, and you should give me time that we talk about this profession of yours, because I really wanted to focus on this side. We don't have any speakers who are cartoonists, so I really want that you should give me time for another talk some other day, whenever it is feasible for you, and we can go for that topic to be
that would be great. I love talking about cartoons. I love talking about it all. You've indulged me. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your time, Joanna. You're a wonderful person, seriously, and thanks a lot that you've extracted time.
Thank you, Fatima.
Pakistan.
Okay, we'll speak to you soon. You take care.
Inshallah.
Bye.
You too. Take care.
Yes. Bye-bye.